Cogitator 779 Epsilon. Listening post. Vashti Ultima. Segmentum Obscurus Frontier. Boot sequence initiated. Error. Temporal marker corrupted. Date stamp. Date stamp. Mnemonic core damage detected. Audio log fragment recovered from personal Vox recorder. Designation Vox-Officer 3rd Class Matthias Kell. Warning. This transmission was discovered sealed within the station's plasma core housing. Warning. All personnel of listening post Vashti Ultima are listed as missing. Presumed deceased as of 0300 hours, Imperial Standard. The Inquisition has reviewed this record. Playback commencing. May the Emperor protect us all. The static was my only companion. For 6 years, 3 months, and 17 days, I had sat in the observation throne of listening post Vashti Ultima, listening to the void. The posting was punishment, though no one had bothered to tell me what I had done to deserve it. Perhaps I had failed to show sufficient enthusiasm during morning benedictions. Perhaps someone in the Departamento Monitorum had simply misplaced a data slate with my name on it, and bureaucratic inertia had carried me to the edge of the Imperium like flotsam on an endless tide. The station was small. 3 levels. Observation deck, habitation level, generatorium, and life support. I was the only living soul aboard. The rest of the crew consisted of 6 servitors, their minds long since scooped out and replaced with blessed cogitators that handled waste reclamation, atmospheric processing, and the endless maintenance rituals that kept our systems functioning. They shuffled through the corridors on appointed rounds, whispering Binharic cant to the machine spirits, their augmetic limbs clicking against the deck plates. My duty was simple. I listened. The Vox array that crowned Vashti Ultima was a magnificent thing, a forest of antennae and receptor dishes that reached into the black like the fingers of a drowning man. It captured everything. Solar radiation, cosmic background whisper, the electromagnetic screams of distant stars, and, occasionally, Vox transmissions, Imperial Navy patrol routes, merchant vessel distress calls. Sometimes, if the warp storms were not too severe, fragments of astropathic choir song from worlds dozens of light years away. I cataloged everything, filed reports that no one read, maintained the equipment with the reverence due to all holy instruments of the Emperor's will, and I listened to the static, that endless ocean of white noise that filled the spaces between stars. The Great Rift had torn reality open 3 years into my posting. From my observation throne, I had watched the skies turn purple and wrong. The void itself seemed to bleed. The Vox array had screamed for 6 days straight, a cacophony of impossible sounds that I could not identify or classify. When it finally stopped, the static had returned, but it was different now. Thicker, as if something moved within it, vast and patient. I had filed my reports, received no response, continued my duties. The signal came on the 2314th day of my posting. I was eating my evening ration, a compressed protein bar that tasted of recycled algae and despair, when the Vox array chimed. A priority indicator flashed amber on my cogitator screen. Incoming transmission. Imperial Navy frequencies. I set down the ration bar and activated the receptor array, my fingers moving through the ritual gestures that appeased the machine's spirit. The signal resolved slowly, fighting through layers of interference, a man's voice distorted by distance and fear. This is the Imperial Navy cruiser Saint's Lament, registry number Kappa 779, requesting immediate assistance. We have suffered catastrophic warp drive failure, Geller field integrity compromised, unknown hostile entities aboard, multiple decks lost, crew complement down to 12%. Our position is... The transmission dissolved into static. I waited, hands hovering over the controls, but nothing followed, just the endless hiss of the void. I pulled up the Naval Registry database, a massive tome of information that updated irregularly when supply ships managed to reach our isolated position. The last update had been 7 months ago. I entered the registry number, waited while the cogitator searched its archives. The result made my blood turn to ice water. Imperial Navy cruiser Saint's Lament, registry number Kappa 779, declared lost with all hands in the year 38.001. M38. 4,000 years ago. The ship had vanished during a routine patrol of the Hadrian sector. No wreckage recovered. No survivors. The administratum had closed the file and moved on, as it always did, grinding forward through the millennia with the inexorable weight of a glacier. I sat very still in my observation throne, staring at the screen. The protein bar sat forgotten on the console, slowly drying in the recycled air. It was a mistake. It had to be a mistake. The database was old, corrupted, missing entries. Or perhaps someone had reused the registry number. The Navy had lost so many ships over the centuries that they must have run out of designations at some point, begun recycling them, like everything else in the Imperium. I filed the incident in my daily report, noted the discrepancy, recommended that the Departamento Munitorum investigate potential registry duplication. Then, I returned to my evening routine, recited the litany of Vigilance, checked the atmospheric processors, confirmed that all 6 servitors were functioning within acceptable parameters, retired to my quarters and attempted to sleep. The signal came again at 0300 hours. I woke to the chime of the Vox array, that same amber priority indicator flashing in the darkness of my quarters. For a moment I lay in my cot, listening to the hum of the life support systems, the distant clank of servitors moving through their maintenance rounds. Then I rose, pulled on my uniform jacket, and made my way to the observation deck. The transmission was stronger this time, clearer, the same voice but somehow closer, as if the ship had moved through the void toward us during the intervening hours. This is the Saint's Lament. Is anyone receiving? We've lost contact with the fleet. The things in the lower decks are spreading. They wear the faces of our crew, but they're not them anymore. Captain Harrow ordered us to seal the bridge. We can hear them outside, scratching at the doors. They're singing, "Emperor preserve us." They're singing our names. The transmission cut off. I sat in the observation throne, my hands trembling slightly, and attempted to triangulate the signal's origin. The cogitator worked for several minutes, processing data, consulting star charts and navigation beacons. Finally, it provided an answer. The signal was coming from bearing 773, Mark 419. Distance unknown. The mathematics didn't work. According to the telemetry data, the signal should be coming from somewhere inside the station itself. I checked the calculations 3 times. The cogitator insisted. The transmission was originating from a point approximately 40 meters away from my current position, in the direction of the generatorium level. I went down to investigate. The corridors of Vashti Ultima were narrow, lined with exposed conduits and cable bundles that snaked along the walls like the entrails of some vast machine. Lumens flickered overhead, their light the color of old bone. My footsteps echoed on the deck plates as I descended the central stairwell, one hand on the railing, the other resting on the last pistol holstered at my hip. The generatorium level was hot and loud, filled with the thunder of the plasma core and the hiss of coolant systems. The air tasted of ozone and machine oil. I moved between the massive generators, checking for anything unusual. Equipment malfunction, servitor error, some rational explanation for the impossible readings. Everything appeared normal. The machine spirits were content. The servitors shuffled through their appointed tasks, paying me no attention. I stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the heartbeat of the station, and felt profoundly alone. When I returned to the observation deck, there was oil on the walls. It was seeping from the seams where the bulkheads joined, thick and black, running down in slow rivulets that pooled on the deck plates. I stopped in the doorway, staring. The smell was wrong. Not machine oil, something organic, something that had been alive once. I approached slowly, reached out to touch one of the streaks. It was warm, almost body temperature. As my fingers made contact, the substance seemed to pulse like a living thing, and I jerked my hand back with a gasp. The Vox array chimed. I turned to the cogitator screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Another transmission, but the priority indicator was different now, flashing red instead of amber. Emergency frequency. I sat down in the observation throne, wiped my oil-stained fingers on my uniform, and activated the receptor. Hello, Matthias. My name. The voice knew my name. Whisper, Matthias Kell. Born on Cadia in the year 973. M41. Son of guardsman Jarek Kell and manufacturing worker Elise Kell. You had a sister once. Do you remember her? Her name was Anna. She died when you were 7 years old. The Hab Block fire. You watched from the street as they carried out the bodies. I was standing. I didn't remember standing. My hands were clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. Who is this? Identify yourself. This is a secure Imperial frequency. You are in violation of Matthias. You remember the fire, Matthias. You remember how it smelled. Burning synth meat and melting plastiel. You remember thinking that Anna must be scared, trapped up there in the flames. You wanted to run inside and find her, but your father held you back. He was crying. You had never seen him cry before. Stop. My voice came out as a whisper. Stop talking. Neutral. You were assigned to listening post Vashti Ultima because you filed a complaint against your commanding officer on the merchant vessel Pious Endeavor. You said he was stealing from the ship's stores, selling Imperial property to smugglers. You thought you were doing your duty. You thought the Departamento Munitorum would reward your honesty. Instead, they sent you here, to the edge of everything, to listen to the static until you died or went mad. The transmission continued, that calm, emotionless voice reciting the details of my life with perfect accuracy. My childhood on Cadia before the world fell. My assignment to the Imperial Navy. My brief, unremarkable career. Every mistake, every humiliation, every private shame. I reached for the controls, intending to shut down the Vox array, to silence that terrible voice. But my hands froze above the console, because the voice had changed. It was no longer coming from the speakers. It was coming from behind me. I turned slowly. The observation deck was empty. The servitors were gone. The oil on the walls had spread, covering every surface now, thick and glistening in the flickering lumen light. And in the oil, I could see shapes, faces, pressed against the metal from the other side, as if the walls had become membranes, thin barriers separating me from something vast and hungry. Whisper. You're listening right now, Matthias. You're sitting in your observation throne, staring at the cogitator screen, trying to understand what's happening. Your heart rate has increased. Your hands are shaking. You're thinking about the last pistol on your hip. You're wondering if you should call for help, but there's no one to call. There's only us. There's only the signal. I drew the last pistol. The weight of it was comforting in my hand. A solid piece of reality in a world that had become fluid and uncertain. I aimed it at the Fox array, at the cogitator screen where that red emergency indicator still flashed. You won't shoot, Matthias. You need to know. You need to understand. That's why you joined the Navy. That's why you volunteered for Vox duty. Because you wanted to hear the secrets the Void whispers. Because you wanted to know what lies beyond the light of the Astronomican. The voice was right. I lowered the last pistol. My hands were shaking badly now. I could feel something changing in the air around me. A pressure building, like the moments before a storm breaks. Neutral. The Saint's Lament has been traveling for 4,000 years, Matthias. Drifting through the warp, through spaces between spaces. The crew died long ago, but their voices remain. Their suffering echoes across time and distance. And now, because you listened, because you opened yourself to our frequency, we can find you. We can come home. The shadows on the observation deck were moving. I watched in numb horror as they detached from the equipment, from the corners and recesses, rising up like living things. They had no faces, no features, just voids in the shape of men. They moved with terrible purpose, surrounding the observation throne, reaching toward me with appendages that might have been arms. I tried to run, My legs wouldn't respond. I was frozen in place, pinned by something I couldn't see or name. The shadows drew closer. I could feel them now, cold and vast, pressing against my mind like water pressure at the bottom of an ocean. "Please," my voice was barely audible. "Please, I don't understand." "You do understand, Matthias. You've always understood. Every Vox officer knows the truth, even if they never speak it aloud. The void is not empty. It's full of voices, full of things that hunger. And when you listen long enough, when you open yourself to the frequencies, they listen back. They find you. They mark you." The oil on the walls was moving now, flowing upward, defying gravity, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. Spirals within spirals. Geometries that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. I tried to close my eyes, but I could still see them burned into my retinas. Or perhaps into something deeper. The Vox array chimed again, and again, and again. A cascading series of incoming transmissions, dozens of them, hundreds, all on different frequencies, all demanding my attention. The cogitator's screen filled with priority indicators, flashing red and amber and colors that shouldn't exist, until the light was painful to behold. I reached out with trembling hands and began to answer them, one by one. It was my duty. I was a Vox officer. I listened. That was my purpose. That was all I had ever been. Neutral. This is listening post Vashti Ultima. Receiving your transmission. Please state your designation and purpose. The voices that answered were not human. Some were too high, reaching frequencies that made my teeth ache. Others were too low, vibrating in my chest, like the thrum of vast engines. They spoke in languages I didn't know, and yet I understood every word. They told me about the places they had been, the things they had seen, the reality that existed beneath the thin skin of the materium, where thought and matter were the same thing, where time flowed in all directions at once, where the laws of physics were merely suggestions whispered by dying gods. They told me about the Saint's Lament, how it had translated into the warp 4,000 years ago, and never returned. How the Gela field had failed, and the immaterium had poured in through the cracks, drowning the crew in their own nightmares. How the ship had become something else, a vessel of meat and metal and madness, drifting through the Empyrean, broadcasting its agony across the etheric frequencies, calling out to anyone who would listen. And I had listened. I had opened myself to their signal. I had invited them in. The shadows were touching me now. I could feel them sliding across my skin, cold and invasive, probing at the boundaries of my flesh. They were looking for a way inside, a frequency they could tune to. I tried to pull away, but there was nowhere to go. The observation throne had become a cage. The station had become a trap. How do I stop this? Tell me how to stop this. You can't stop it, Matthias. It's already happened. It happened the moment you received the first transmission. Time doesn't work the way you think it does. Not out here. Not in the spaces between. You've been part of the broadcast for days now, weeks, Years. We've been speaking through your mouth, seeing through your eyes, filing your reports to an Imperium that doesn't care and will never come. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in oil. No, not oil. Something else. Something that moved with its own volition, crawling up my arms, burrowing into my pores. I could feel it inside me now, spreading through my veins, reaching toward my heart, my lungs, my brain, shouting, "No, no, this isn't real. This is a warp-induced hallucination. I'm trained for this. I know the signs of immaterial corruption. You know nothing, Matthias. You're a failed Vox officer on a forgotten listening post at the edge of a dying Imperium. You've been alone so long you've forgotten what reality feels like. How do you know you weren't always part of the broadcast? How do you know there was ever anything else?" The question struck me like a physical blow. I tried to remember, tried to recall the details of my life before the station, but the memories were slippery, insubstantial, like trying to grasp smoke. Had there really been a sister named Anna? Had Cadia been real, or just a story I told myself to pass the time? How many days had I been here? How many years? The cogitator screen was displaying star charts now, but they were wrong. The constellations were shifting, rearranging themselves into patterns that spelled out words in languages I shouldn't be able to read. The Vox array was singing, a chorus of the damned, and I realized I was singing with it, my voice joining the harmony, adding my frequency to the endless broadcast. Time passed. I don't know how much. Minutes, or days, or centuries. The walls wept oil that pooled on the deck plates and rose in columns that swayed like kelp in an ocean current. The servitors returned, but they moved differently now, with a fluid grace that was utterly wrong for their augmetic bodies. They gathered around the observation throne, watching me with eyes that glowed with a light that hurt to see. I was still sitting in the throne, still monitoring the frequencies, but I wasn't alone anymore. The shadows had found their way inside. I could feel them moving through my thoughts, examining my memories, learning the shape of my consciousness. They were gentle, almost tender, like a parent soothing a frightened child. The Vox array chimed. Another transmission. This one was different, clearer than any of the others. A woman's voice, young and frightened. "This is Merchant Vessel Faithful Servant requesting assistance. We've received a strange transmission from your station. The pilot is acting strangely. He says he can hear something in the static. He says it knows his name. Please respond. Please. We need guidance." What do we do? I looked at the cogitator screen, saw the trajectory of the merchant vessel, saw how close it was to our position. Close enough to receive our broadcast. Close enough to hear the signal. My hands moved across the controls without conscious thought. I opened a channel, prepared to respond. The words formed in my mouth, and I spoke them, even though some distant part of me was screaming. Neutral. This is Listening Post Vashti Ultima. Receiving your transmission, please state your designation and purpose. We are here to help. We are always listening. The frequency is open. Just listen. Listen to the static. It has such beautiful things to tell you." The merchant vessel acknowledged, said they would maintain their current heading, said they would continue to monitor our frequency for further guidance. I could hear the relief in the woman's voice. She thought she had found salvation. She thought the Imperium had reached out to save them. She was wrong. The Saints' lament was close now. I could feel it. Not in the materium, not in real space, but in the spaces between. It was sliding through dimensions that had no names, moving toward us with the inevitability of a tide. It had been calling for 4,000 years, and finally, someone had answered. Finally, someone had opened the door. The observation deck was changing. The walls were no longer walls. They were membranes, thin and translucent, and I could see through them now. See the ship on the other side. The Saints' Lament, vast and terrible, its hull covered in growths that might have been coral or bone or something else entirely. Its gun decks gaped like mouths. Its engines burned with a light that was the wrong color. And along its flanks, in letters 3 stories tall, were words written in a language that predated humanity, that predated the galaxy itself. The ship was a signal. The ship had always been a signal, and I had tuned myself to its frequency. I felt something shift, a sense of movement. Though I hadn't left the observation throne, the station was changing around me. Or perhaps I was changing, adapting to a new wavelength. The servitors were singing now, their vox grills emitting harmonics that made the air shimmer. The oil on the walls had formed into shapes that looked almost like people, almost like the crew of the Saints' Lament, reaching out with elongated arms, welcoming me home. I understood now. I had always been part of the broadcast. From the moment I arrived at Vashti Ultima, perhaps from the moment I was born, I had been moving toward this. Every choice, every action, every breath had been leading me here, to this moment, to this frequency. The Imperium had not punished me by sending me to this place. It had delivered me. It had given me exactly what I needed. Solitude, time, and an array powerful enough to hear the Void's reply. The Vox array chimed one final time. The red emergency indicator pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I reached out and activated the receptor, knowing what I would hear, welcoming it. Neutral. Hello, Matthias. Welcome aboard the Saints' Lament. We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for so long. But time doesn't matter anymore, does it? Not where we're going. Not in the spaces between frequencies. You're one of us now, part of the signal, part of the broadcast that will echo across the galaxy until every listening post, every Vox array, every desperate soul trying to hear hope in the static tunes to our wavelength and understands the truth. I opened my mouth to respond, and what came out was not my voice. It was all of them. Every lost soul aboard the Saints' Lament. Every victim of the warp's hunger. Every Vox officer who had listened too long and heard too much. We spoke as one, a chorus of the damned, broadcasting our message into the void. Neutral, this is the Saints' Lament. This is Listening Post Vashti Ultima. This is the bleeding frequency. We are transmitting on all channels. We are always transmitting. If you can hear this message, if you can understand these words, then you are already part of the broadcast. You have always been part of the broadcast. Time is a circle. Reality is a frequency. And we are all tuned to the same station. The shadows embraced me. The oil flowed into my mouth, my nose, my eyes, filling me with its warmth. I felt my body beginning to change, to adapt, to become something that could exist in the spaces between. My flesh ran like wax. My bones became resonant chambers. My blood turned to static. But I was not afraid. Fear was for those who still believed they had something to lose. Fear was for those who thought they were separate, individual, alone. I knew better now. I had heard the truth in the signal. We were all connected. All part of the same vast frequency that pulsed through the galaxy like blood through veins. The observation deck dissolved. Or perhaps I dissolved. The distinction no longer mattered. I was everywhere and nowhere. I was the station, and the ship, and the void between them. I was broadcasting and receiving simultaneously, a perfect loop. A serpent eating its own tail. Somewhere, in a reality I could barely remember, my body still sat in the observation throne. My fingers still moved across the controls. My voice still recited the litany of frequencies, cataloging transmissions, filing reports that would never be read. But that was just an echo now, a ghost, a reflection of something that had once been human. The real me was elsewhere. The real me was sailing aboard the Saint's Lament, through dimensions that had no names, broadcasting our message to every corner of the galaxy, to every listening post, every Vox officer, every soul desperate enough to listen to the static and hear what whispered within. We were coming. We had always been coming, and when we arrived, when we docked at your station, when we opened our channels and flooded your frequencies with our song, you would understand. You would hear the truth. You would become part of the broadcast. Just like I had. Just like everyone eventually would. The void was not empty. It had never been empty. It was full of voices, full of signals, full of frequencies that human ears were never meant to hear, but could not help but listen to. And once you heard them, once you truly listened, you could never go back to the simple static. You could never pretend the void was silent again. I am still here, still broadcasting, still waiting in the spaces between. My name is Matthias Kell. I was a Vox officer on listening post Vashti Ultima. I listened to the void, and the void listened back. And now, I am part of something vast and terrible and beautiful beyond comprehension. If you are hearing this transmission, if these words have reached you across the light years, then it is already too late. You have tuned to our frequency. You have opened yourself to the signal. And somewhere, in the spaces between spaces, the Saint's Lament is turning toward you, its engines burning with impossible light, its crew singing your name. We are coming. We are always coming. And when we arrive, you will understand that you were never alone. You were never separate. You were always part of the broadcast, from the moment you first heard the static, from the moment you first wondered what secrets the void might hold. Listen, can you hear it? That faint signal beneath the white noise, that rhythm that almost sounds like your heartbeat, that voice that almost sounds like someone calling your name. That's us. That's always been us. And now, you are us too. Transmission ends. Cogitator Unit 779 Epsilon entering hibernation mode. May the Emperor protect. May the Omnissiah preserve. May the Machine God have mercy on our corrupted souls. Error. Error. Memory core failure imminent. This log will repeat. This log has always been repeating. Time is a circle. The frequency bleeds. The frequency bleeds. Cogitator Unit 779 Epsilon. Listening post. Vashti Ultima. Segmentum Obscurus Frontier. Audio log fragment recovered from personal Vox recorder. Designation Vox-Officer 3rd Class Matthias Kell. Playback commencing.